Welcome back to Invest Africa, where this week we're taking a closer look at Uganda as a business and investment destination. Still in studio with me today is Stephen Sutherland. He's Sales Director for Africa Fleet Services at Mix Telematics. Alan Mutono is the MD of Mutono Technologies, and Kayiza Motovu Kasozi is a counsellor at the Ugandan High Commission as well. Stephen, we had the insert in part one of the show highlight that to ensure long-term economic growth, Uganda will need to do more to improve its cross-border operations. As I highlighted a little earlier on in the show, you have used, or you are using now, Kampala, Uganda as a base to your rest of Africa operations. Just how much of a challenge is it dealing with the challenges that come with doing cross-border trade from Uganda specifically?
I think getting goods into Uganda, I think Alan already mentioned a couple of the sticky points that we have there. I think what we have found is it's still a lot easier than doing it directly from RSA because you're already to a large extent halfway there. But I think we found is not so much the problem of getting the goods across, it's the documentation and paperwork coming back. And
never mind the costs that were highlighted.
Never mind the costs. I think at the end of the day is for us, we can get, if we bulk the hardware into the country, we do start getting a few economies of scale coming through there from our side. But we're finding that we lose those economy scales very quickly, and we hit the market at essentially the same with the same issues that we had before, just because it takes such a long time. If we can get those things a little bit more efficient, I must admit it's a lot easier working within the East African community. The moment you break out of the East African community, then you're essentially on a little bit of a road to nowhere at the moment.
What's your view on the effectiveness of trading blocks? Because we've got COMESA on the one hand, but you've also got that East African market protocol that was recently signed, and that putting the East African territories pretty much on the same page with the same agenda.
There's nothing that can beat numbers. First of all, in the East African community, we have a combined population of 150, and the way we operate in our region, in the East African community region, with or without that block, we are more or less a homogeneous people. That is Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. And then the East African community framework formalizes it, so there's nothing that can beat that arrangement. And if like one regional envoy put it, if you invest, let's say in Uganda, you are getting a package of buy one, get 4 free. So you come to Uganda, then it means you're moving into Kenya, Tanzania. You can easily move into Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda. But then there are other members who are who are our neighbors, but outside the East African community, who are in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and South Sudan. These make it much more attractive in that they are closely linked to Uganda, and so anyone wanting to do business in Uganda is welcomed automatically into all those economies.
Alan, we've had Kayiza there highlighting the formal structures that are in place that that investors can certainly derive benefit from. As a business, though, operating, to what extent do you actually, in reality, derive that benefit?
It's still a halfway journey, in that you can access certain incentives, and also many of the planned investments that bring the East African community together are still in the making. There is a silver lining ahead of it. For instance, for many decades, almost 100, the gateway into Uganda has been the port of Mombasa, the rail line on the highway until the border. But now, government has announced construction of an inland port along the lake that will open up alternative route through Dar es Salaam. Dar es Salaam is not as highly utilized as Mombasa is. So that will also bring some breathing space on that route. Mm-hmm. And then, as anyone who works in the market will tell you, that you set out to do something, and then you have a time of 6 months or 1 year to achieve it. But then those impediments have been highlighted, will affect you. However, to stay away you damage yourself further. As business, you don't expect it to be smooth. Where the risk is higher, the gain is higher. I've said it earlier. Furthermore, Mr. Matov mentions that we've got, in East Africa, it's a market of 150 million people, and that's about almost 10% or more, 10% of the Africa's population. And this is almost a homogeneous market. Common language, only two, English and Swahili. So you can brand something in Swahili and you still sell, or brand in English and then you still sell. Then, but in terms of still on investment, staying relevant to what this show is about, is different sectors will give you different benefits.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, we cannot talk about this economy, as one entity. We've got to look at the different sectors, but certainly something that does affect all sectors of the economy. Stephen, and we had Alan highlight it and allude to it a little earlier, is the challenge that an infrastructure deficit presents. In your books, just how much of a challenge has that presented right now? Because we often hear the first mover advantage reason being cited as a significant enough reason for moving into territories like this that aren't perhaps as mature as some of the other economies on the continent. But then you've got to deal with deficits like that of infrastructure where development still needs to take place.
I think for us it's a bit of a two-edged sword. If we have a look at it based on the industry that we're in, and I think Alan alluded to the fact that depending on which sector you're playing in, if we look at transport and logistics is a huge portion of our market. So any infrastructure deficiencies that exist become a major issue within their lives. That's what we help them to solve. So the issues are something we can help them to identify efficiencies with regards to how they move. But again, yes, we also then suffer the fate of making sure that any goods that we're moving out of the country also generally suffer the same fate. So it's a little bit of a, as I said, a bit of a two-edged sword at the moment.
Is enough of a stride being made and enough of a focus being placed on infrastructure development?
I think when we had a look at it first, and obviously we've been through a number of countries in Africa, I think there's always a lot more that can be done. As far as where it's positioned with regards to other countries, and I think if we look at it from road congestion, I think we're all kind of suffer that same fate. I think a lot has been done. I think as Alan and I would both like to see it happen a lot quicker. And again too, is if we can find there's some alternative routes in being able to move stuff from place to place.
Of course, Kaiza, there's always room for development funds in the region and the role that they have to play in actually seeing development like this happen on the continent as a whole. Are we seeing appetite? Are we seeing that interest come through from, or that supportive role being played by development funds in Uganda?
We have a tripartite arrangement. We have already had two summits. That's COMESA, East African Community, and SADC. And one of the main focuses of that tripartite cooperation is infrastructure development. But then, as the trend is these days, it's more, if things are to move faster, we have to look at the private sector. And I mentioned at the beginning that this is, it's a challenge, granted, but it's more of an opportunity. And when you talk about Africa as the investment destination of the future, then this shows there's a lot that you can reap from investing in infrastructure in Africa, or let's say in East Africa or in Uganda.
You highlight the role that the private sector has to play. What room is there for PPPs? Are we seeing that take off to an extent in Uganda?
Oh, PPP, that is what is being embraced at the moment. I think by now that we have had a couple of visits from Ugandan officials to South Africa to study how PPPs are operating. And if we are to develop infrastructure in Uganda and indeed in the region, PPP is the way to go as a first step.
Alan, we've been talking about deficits on the infrastructure side. What about on the skill side? Because aside from you being an entrepreneur and the MD of Mutono Technologies, you're also a part of the Association of Ugandan Professionals in South Africa. And I've got to ask the question, are we looking at a brain drain out of Uganda?
You know, when we talk about skills, that is one of Uganda's undiscovered gems. There are a lot of skilled people within the country.
So just as many skills, Ugandan skills that we have in South Africa, we've got in Uganda.
We've got, and we've got a lot of supply, oversupplied actually. There are more than 22 universities, many of which are private. The education standard is very good in Uganda. It's a British-founded education system, and we've had excellent professionals coming out of that system. And there are several of us actually within South Africa as well, whom I represent on Association of Uganda Professionals. And then we've also found a movement back and forth. They come South African, they work for a while with the corporations here. When the corporations open branches in Uganda, they go back and work there. So there isn't a shortage of that. However, what might be what we're lacking in the country is on-the-job training. You can have the best electrical engineer to work in Stephen's company, but it's telematics, but you still have to get him on the job, you know, your trade skills.
Very quickly, Stephen, do you share that, that kind of experience of the skills base that you have access to operating in the country?
Yes, absolutely, Alicia. I think it was also one of the very much positives or the ticks in the box when we had a look at Uganda. So not only do you have people that have a very strong work ethic, but again you have people that can accommodate and adopt to your technology and very much the ways in which you do business. And also they teach you. So it's very much a skills transfer in both directions. And yes, they're good people to work with. There's a strong entrepreneurial spirit that flows there and is very contagious. I was just saying earlier on that's where we go to have our batteries charged.
Well, a good place to leave it. Let's leave it there, gentlemen. Unfortunately, 30 minutes, not enough time to delve into every aspect in terms of business opportunities and challenges that a country like Uganda presents. But thanks so much for your time. We've come to the end of this edition of Invest Africa. And thanks to my guest, Stephen Sutherland, who's the Sales Director for Africa at Mixed Telematics, Alan Mutono, MD of Mutono Technologies, and Kahiza Motovo Kasozi, who's a counsellor at the Ugandan High Commission as well. Until next week, from me, Alicia Second, it's goodbye.